And I am a representative of Invest in Skåne, and my work is primarily related to the games industry in the region. It's a great honor and a fantastic privilege to speak to you today and be the host of this Skåne Game Summit 2021. I will be the host for the evening and the day rather. Just some brief notes before we get started. Questions we will take at the end. If I understand it correctly, we have a chat. So anyone who would like to ask any questions, you can ask them in the end and the Q&A session. All presentation material and contact information to the presenters will be available after the presentation. Without further ado, I would like to present today's agenda. Those who have received the invite, it's no big changes. The only change is that Peter Lübeck could not participate physically in today's event and will be joining us through a link. But first of all, the welcoming by me and short presentation about Invest in Skåne and our activities within the game industry and what we hope to achieve for the region's games industry. Then my good friend from Caroline from City of Malmö will present what the games industry means for Malmö as a city. And then we'll move on to Erik Robertson, who will the host or the founder rather of Nordic Game Conference and Nordic Game Ventures, and he will speak a little bit about the games industry as well. Then on to the main attraction perhaps of this, one of the main attractions of this presentation is the report written by Stefan Lampinen, commissioned by us at Invest in Skåne, the Skåne Games Industry Intelligence Report. And last but not least, we have the CEO of Game Habitat, where we are right now live streaming this presentation, the Game Habitat past, present and future of Southern Sweden games industry. And then if there are any questions, we will take them in the end around 4 o'clock. Then, without further ado, I would like to present Invest in Skåne, the organization that I represent. We are a regional public non-profit trade and investment facilitator based in the southernmost region of Sweden, namely aptly named Skåne. Our main objective is to further the economic development in the region by attracting investments, companies, talent, and of course help the local companies to reach international markets in a wide variety of sectors. My main topic is the games industry, and I will hopefully be able to help the local games industry grow to reach international markets, but also attract new and exciting companies to the region. So those are our goals. And some projects that we have been working on and will continue to work on throughout the year and hopefully in the future as well. For those who have not seen it, we sponsored an article in MCV Develop on the 26th of October, where we let the games industry and its stakeholders within the region present themselves basically to the global audience in MCV Develop. So a lot of the larger but also smaller studios, the Game Assembly Game Development School, and also the Nordic Game Conference was featured. Then we, earlier last year, late 2020, we employed the help of Stefan Lampinen to write the International Games Development Cluster Intelligence Report, and I'm proud to say that it's been a fantastic base plate for our future work in order to market the region and try to attract companies and investments in the future. We have also partnered up with Game Habitat in a hopefully a long and prosperous cooperation, where at the moment we are actually sponsoring an office here at the Game Habitat in order to hopefully, after this little spat of global pandemic has run out, that we can help attract companies by inviting them for a short stay here in Skåne and in Malmö to give them a taste of the fantastic game development community that is here in the region. This is a pilot project that hopefully will run throughout the entire of 2021, and depending on its success, it will hopefully continue in some form or another. We are also planning on more active work in terms of marketing the Swedish and in particular the Skåne games industry throughout the world at a large number of conferences, events, and other events where game developers, game industry representatives, and stakeholders are likely to meet. This is in order to bring more eyes, more talent, and hopefully more investments and establishments to the region in the future. And with that said, I will leave the stage for Caroline, and she can talk a little bit about Malmö's role in this. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caroline Bongoat, and I work as a business developer for the City of Malmö. My main focus is to promote and strengthen the sector of cultural and creative industries to allow for increased opportunities for creative companies in Malmö to develop, grow, and to be competitive in a national or an international market. Cultural and creative sectors are important for ensuring the continued development of societies and are at the heart of creative economy. Knowledge intense and based on individual creativity and talent, they generate considerable economic wealth. More importantly, they are critical to a shared sense of identity, culture, and values. In economic terms, they show above average growth and create jobs, particularly for young people. They are also more digitalized, often born global, more sustainable, and more innovative. The creative and cultural industries have grown considerably over the last decade and are today larger and more productive than numerous of other industries. Despite this, public and legislative attitudes towards the industries have not changed substantially, and there is still only very little talk about the investment potential in the sector and its function as an engine for Sweden's economy. In Malmö, we see the creative capital as the linchpin of the city's future, with creativity laying the foundation for the innovative capability required to solve the societal challenges we're facing. The gaming industry contributes to Malmö's economy with innovation, jobs, and growth, but they're also a crucial part of the city's identity and attractiveness, and are to be closer linked to our hospitality industry. The City of Malmö have an important and complex task to be strategic enablers of the gaming industry from a public service perspective. We do this best by being responsive to the needs of the industry and support initiatives, projects, platforms, and events that make a difference for all sizes of companies. We have today several collaborations with the industry, for example, the Nordic Game Conference, Game Assembly, Pink Programming, Game Habitat, and many more that we support financially, but we're also working to make this sector visible and communicate the importance of this industry and the needs, both internal within our organization and external. We work to make it easier for more game development companies to establish themselves in Malmö, but also to expand their talent recruitment and promote entrepreneurship while also contributing to sustainable growth. We would like to produce updated statistics on the gaming companies and for the cultural and creative industries in general in Malmö. This to better understand the needs of the industries and to use this as a strategic tool within our operations and our ongoing strategic work with develop the creative and cultural industries. I'm very much looking forward for today's presentations during this first ever Skåne Game Summit, and would like to give a big thank to Invest in Skåne and Game Habitat for your commitment with this afternoon. At last, I wish to empower all generations of creatives to engage you in the part of the development of the city, making Malmö a more creative-friendly city and an important center for game development in Europe. Thank you.
Hey, Erik Robertson, failed game developer. Some of you have heard me introduce myself as, but maybe actually mostly known as the founder of the Nordic Game Conference. And I have revised, I mean, between the invitation and the finalization of today's agenda, I have been thinking. So my slides are actually fairly recent. So I figured out that what we're doing is that we're building locally, regionally based games industry marketing and investment platforms. And the scary part here is that I have about 20 minutes in the agenda and I have 19 slides. So that means that if you feel the least bit of motion sickness or anything, get a firm grip on the table in front of you and close your eyes for a while and we'll all be okay. No? What? Sorry.
Terribly sorry about this.
Okay. We did have a room for entertainment. This has been very well rehearsed, but it's pretty convincing as comedy, isn't it?
Control L, sorry.
Yeah, yes, this is my second slide. I did it myself. I recognize it. Okay, so what I would like to start with is to talk about the games industry a little bit in general, not in detail, not whatsoever, but also some on the investment end. Okay, so see, this is Newzoo, one of our favorite sources in the games industry, showing this immense growth that you can see if I'm oriented properly. Do you see it? Do you see it maybe down there on screen? Am I pointing in the right direction? Am I at your top right? Great. Now I'm at your top right. I know where I am. Okay. So you see the growth here is immense, and we also have the Swedish success that our industry organization so proudly pronounced recently. We've passed iron ore and wood pulp, the traditional export industries in Sweden. We're past that. That probably means that we're adults now or something. Okay, so this is my own interpretation, because there's this idea. This slide is really old. This is about 2 years ago. I was sort of seeing a recession and stock market downturn, and it was generally worrying, etc. So I wanted to compare the growth of the games industry over the last, almost 30 years, and the evolution of the stock market. So, and I will use the OMX Stockholm 30 index going forward. So you see, yeah, stock market as some sort of measure of the health of the general economy. That's debatable in itself, but let's use it for now, okay, if you bear with me. Compared to the games industry growth. So then you see if the games industry does not seem very cyclical. It's maybe if you really, really struggle, you could see a slight anti-cyclical tendency. But anti-cyclical, we'll get back to that, okay? And here you also see the segments that we started out in arcades, coin-operated machinery, and it's been console, it's been PC, and now it's very much dominated by mobile. And success, well, investing in games in the stock market, these are the 19 Nordic game development companies and Nordic game companies actually, that are listed on the Stockholm stock exchanges and lists today. There are actually 25, but 6 of them haven't been there for even 3 years. So, if you bet on the index, you would have earned 23% on your money over 3 years, which is a decent return. If you bet on a portfolio that encompassed all of these 3 in equal shares, equal parts of these companies, you would have gotten you would have done better than double your money. But you could have lost a lot of money on individual stocks. I'm getting into the details now. I wasn't supposed to do that. I think you'll have access to this presentation afterwards if you want to dig in. Or you can always email me with questions. So what is this? Well, this is you remember I meant the cyclical thing. So, okay, if you look down here, you can see that this is compared. So 0 here, I mean the flat line here is the development of the index over the last 3 years, okay? That's the stock market index. And so all of these companies, I took the 10 top price growth companies, so they all outperformed the index, basically, some of them by over 1,000%. But the interesting thing is, of course, well, nothing much happens actually until, March last year. Surprise, what happened then? So, is this hot air or is it something else? Well, I'm not a stock analyst. That's not my take. But what I am doing since a couple of years is investing in the games industry. And here are a couple of ways of focusing on subsectors or strata within the games industry. You could focus on different value chains, the developers, the people that actually produce the games. You can focus on the publishers, the people that finance and distribute the games over the world. You can focus on the platform owners, the people that build the boxes and control the marketplaces associated with those electronic boxes. There are people doing tech that the game developers use to make and distribute their games. There are esports operators that do mysterious things that I can't quite understand. I'm old. And there are, of course, conglomerates that bunch a couple of portfolio investments in these different aspects of the games industry and wrap them into one. You could, of course, also address growth stages. I mean, the maturity of the companies. Because if you invest early in a company and it experiences eventually high growth, that is one of the most attractive times in a company's development. That's where the value can really grow percentage-wise. So if you want to invest in that, you basically have to be a business angel, invest yourself in one of these startups, or you could invest in a VC fund that picks those companies for you. Investing in later stages, that's much more accessible. You can access listed companies like on the Stockholm stock exchanges and so forth, or you could invest through funds. You could also choose different geographies. You can invest all over the world, or you could choose for one reason or another, maybe because they're close to you emotionally, geographically, or if you just know this sector better, it could make sense for you to focus on Europe, Asia, or North America. But you could also focus on the Nordics. But why would you do such a thing? Why would you focus on investing in Nordic game companies? Well, maybe because they're the best. This is an index of the number of people in a given country employed in game development, divided by 100,000 people population. Okay, you follow me? Okay, so Iceland scores 101, which is basically they have 300 people working in Reykjavik in game development. They're the second biggest employer of game developers, of IT personnel, after the bank and financing. Sweden, Finland are at the top. The only reason Canada is even there is because they stole half the French games industry through subsidies some 10 years ago, just like they did with the French animation industry. Canadian, I mean, they're very skilled people, and a very nice original IP is actually coming out of Canada now. But, yeah, well, it can be argued very well that the Nordics, being the highest density employers, it's a specialty, it's a modern specialty in the Nordics that joined, the wood pulp and iron ore that we've had for hundreds of years, and now games are there also. I am not going into the details on this slide, but there are a number of funds that are traded on the stock exchanges, making it very easy and very accessible for you to invest in the stock market if you'd want to. There are, if you have access to them, a number of private partnerships with different geographic focus that also invest in the games industry. Different focus in the value chain, different focus geographically. And there are also two, I would say, more pure play venture capital funds, and we'll get back to what I mean by that we have in Europe today, and they're Hyro Capital, and they are actually Nordic Game Ventures. So why this Nordic focus in a venture capital fund? Well, it's about the brand strength for Nordic developers, the whole brand built around Nordic Game with developers and value chain actors. That there's a strength in that, a strength that is well known to international operators in this space. Yes, Sweden, it is very well known that Sweden is home to many good game developers, but so is Finland, and also the Danes, Icelanders, or Norwegians are known, and it's known this is very well known in the global games industry, and they all bunch us together as Scandinavians anyway. So, but if you focus on you're not supposed to put all your eggs in one basket like that. Focusing on a narrow industry in a narrow geography, you shouldn't really do that. But we're absolutely convinced that if you do that, you have much more opportunities for mutual support, true synergies within the portfolio and among the companies, and it's easier to engage an expert network that's geographically based. And I mean, if things should go bad, you can salvage investments by maybe allowing people to keep their careers, keep teams together, but maybe find a new home geographically in another more successful company, etc. We are utterly convinced that skills and teams are much more transferable among portfolio companies or industry companies in a specific geographic sector in this industry as, for example, compared with biotech. There the skills are, I'm convinced at least, much more specific and narrow and does not transfer very easy to another company. And the idea is, of course, this is about investing to make a return, but the effect, if we invest in Nordic game developers, that will give us our entrepreneurs more staying power, if you wish, if you will, allow me that expression. They don't have to sell or exit their companies at such an early stage. That raises the bar for international investors. Our entrepreneurs will earn more money, which they will hopefully, or they will certainly be able to reinvest it in the Nordic industry. We've spent a lot of time and resources on getting the permits needed. This is not a private partnership. This is open to other investors, and to be able to attract that kind of capital, we need to have the permits from the financial supervisory authorities. And we have secured that from both the Swedish and Finnish authorities, and that at least formally allows us to approach institutional investors that need these degrees of oversight and transparency and supervision, basically. And there is also the last, this is the really soft value here, but supporting the Nordic games industry's present supremacy is good for the general economy of the Nordic countries. It leads to qualified jobs in general, because there are so many skills that you can build in the game sector that's transferable to other sectors. So it leads to more qualified jobs also in other industries. And it supports ESG values, environmental, social, governance values, Nordic values, democracy, equality. And a good way to spread those across the world is among gamers. let's not speak too loudly about that specific point, but it's there. Our first fund has done plus 13% in the first year, based on new rounds, etc. And we also host and organize the Games Capital Summit, which is sort of part of the Nordic Game Conference at times when that's appropriate, that attracts global games talent pitching and meeting global VCs and investors. These are the 6 investments that we've done in the last year. I'm sorry to say that only 2 are in Skåne out of 6, 3 out of 6 are in Sweden, and the rest is, of course, in Finland. Yes, we have a big industry in Sweden, but the Finns are a little bit better. They are hitting over their weight. But it's a sheer pleasure to work on the Nordic perspective in this. What we've achieved recently with the Nordic Game Conference in these trying times, we grew in number of participants. Yes, okay. We're cheating a little bit with the statistics here. We do 2 events where we used to do 1. You do what you have to do. And so we're still growing and serving a global audience to an even higher degree. What we should have done in these trying times is, of course, we should have bought a couple of competitors that are struggling and then grow. But, we set up this investment fund and invested in game developers instead. But there are a couple of things I want to let you know that we are doing to expand and grow. We're continuing working on our talent-focused Nordic Game Discovery Contest that presents new teams to the market. This is the 5th season that's beginning now, and we're running over a dozen qualifiers all over the world in partnership with global conferences. The Nordic Game Awards will come back in May, but we will go little bit more Eurovision, maybe engaging the audience directly. Maybe we will call up Helsinki and ask for their vote. We're still developing this to make it an even better entertainment value, especially if you're sitting back home in your sofa, not with your TV screen, but with your laptop on your lap following the Nordic Game Awards. We are expanding into recruitment events and a sustainable jobs platform. And yes, finally, yes, we've been talked into doing a physical event for the general public, a B2C event with a very well-renowned local operator, Numera Mesor, which will be the first week of November this year. So to promote this, we're going into more video-based communication and promotion. Finally, we're working with that. So what we've been doing a newsletter, with text and pictures, still pictures, like simulating a still picture here with no text. We're going to work more with video formats in distributing news among and around the world regarding the Nordic game industry and the activities associated with that. However, we do realize that we know we have a very strong brand with Nordic Game in the games industry, in the global games industry. That's a given. Both among developers and publishers and the people making the tech and whatnot. There's a strong brand there. We do not fool ourselves into believing that we have a good brand reach in the general public that would attract a good attendance at the physical event in Malmö, even though it's our hometown. So we are going to develop, most likely, this is a bit tentative, but we'll be test driving a new brand, a little bit more accessible and popular approach, but still to the games industry with a special focus on Malmö. So Malmö Game TV, that will be coming out with news, Malmö centered, and it will be a promotion and advertising vehicle leading up to a physical recurring event in November. Yes, for the general public, yes. And also, of course, for the general public in their professional daily jobs roles, spreading information about the games industry and the games medium's immense importance for the future, for your kids' careers, future tax base, what have you. And this is not something we intend to do ourselves. We'd absolutely love to work with other actors, local and regional, into using this medium to promote games industry focused things with some sort of node, center, pivot point around Malmö. So our agenda is to promote a coming B2C event, but talking about the industry is what will make sense. Coming games, reportage at local studios, what have you. Just finally, a few observations, backing off from the subject matter a bit. Yes, I've done such a graph. GDX, I made that up myself. There is a website, you can look it up. But so Stockholm has, even though having a much higher population in absolute number, the density of game developers is also in Stockholm double that of the shared second place, which is Skövde. Yes, that's how it's pronounced, if you didn't know. Skövde. And Malmö. Malmö. That's how that's pronounced. Oh, I'm going to skip to the next slide. And here are a couple of random things I drew from the underlying data. The average size of the number of employees in a game development company in Malmö and Stockholm are not all that different. Skövde seems to be more startup, early stage, etc. And we know that because of the education and what the second. I should have used a smaller font here, so it would be more self-explanatory, is the relative sizes of companies number 2 and 3 in relation to the largest company in the city, okay? You follow me? So in Stockholm, the second company in size is 97% of the size of the largest company then, of course, being 100% in size, okay? So number 3 is 80%. Actually, in Stockholm, the 5 largest companies are almost the same size, somewhere around 700 employees. In Skövde, number 2 is a third of the size of the first largest company. In Malmö, the second largest company is smaller than a tenth of the largest company. Okay? I don't know why it is so, but it's certainly worth noting. Critical mass, there's a small reference here. It's actually an academic clustering study from the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands, where they say, well, a critical mass for a cluster is 55 firms. Boom, they arrive at that by statistical analysis, and there certainly is something into it. I won't get into the details. I'd be totally happy to discuss that paper and the findings with anybody else that's so inclined. Email me at erik@nordicgame.com or whatever. Given their measurement, whatever you put into it, Stockholm has 4 times the number of firms where the critical mass supposedly is 55. Okay, you can redefine your cluster until you get 55, but and a games incubator. We have an accelerator coming, I believe. Yeah, we had a games incubator in a project for a couple of years, but I mean, sustainable for the future. I think such a thing is important, but I'm not going to try to interpret this. There's something very, very interesting here, but we need to work on this data together in some ordered way. That's basically what I had to say. Thank you very much. I'm going to take my drink and go off there.
Thank you so much, Erik. And with that, I would like to introduce the next speaker, Stefan Lampinen, who will present the Skåne Games Industry Cluster Report. And I'll give the stage to Stefan. Nej, du kan stå.
Hello. So, I can start, I guess. I'm here to basically discuss about the world's gaming clusters from a study that Olof and Invest in Skåne asked me to do. And I would like to thank Olof and his team, because it was very precise questions and objective what you want to achieve with this report. Also Pierre, a French guy that has fantastic career within Ubisoft and Massive, gives some insight about the biggest studios roadmap many years ahead. And lastly, without my daughter, I wouldn't be able to compile this kind of thick report, because it was many weeks of work. Anyway, so the purpose of this report was basically to look into which gaming clusters are the best in the world today. Obviously, that is a moving target because technology change, etc. And which of the clusters could inspire the region of Skåne and take some key learnings. So I basically started July, September, late summer. I mean, spent 6-8 weeks. Olof called me every second week and checking in. And I did like semi-structured interviews from all over the world. Luckily, I have a good network, and everybody, C-level guys from the trade in the business was, of course, helping me. So that's, and I should also say, Game Advisor is basically doing C-level introduction, business intelligence, and advisory for small or big companies, but obviously you find that on the net. So which gaming cluster could inspire Malmö and the region for future growth was the target. So the presentation today, I'm basically going to give a quick overview of, first quickly on the industry, then on the countries, the biggest countries in the world, just 1 minute per country. And then I'm going to go into what are the key learnings from the gaming clusters and what do we need to do in Malmö. So the gaming industry has grown tremendously, and part of that is unfortunately due to the pandemic. So obviously cinema, entertainment park, VR location, those guys have lost a lot of revenue, but they will come back, of course. So the growth this 2020 basically surpassed anything we could believe. The player base is an unbelievable 2.5 billion players, and the revenue is going to pass $200 billion. It's like, wow. Every year, I'm surprised with the growth. And if you look at all the platforms, I mean, PlayStation and Xbox, they had a launch last Christmas, Q4, of course. And that means that the console is an all-time high. Nintendo Switch, again, handheld device, surprised everybody. All of these three platforms has managed a digital transition very well, offering physical games, digital games, and of course, looking into the cloud. And with that, I'm going to do you from dataspelsbranschen. Small team working incredibly hard, just 90 seconds about the Swedish games industry. Was I too quick there? Is it coming in? Oops. You can come and help me here. Luckily, I don't have 500 guys in the audience. See if we can start the video with some technical guys. All my career, I've been having help from IT. There we go. About how the Swedish dataspels industry look at the industry.
Did you know that every 8th person in the world has played a game made by Swedes? Oh, but Sweden, aren't they too busy shopping at IKEA or dancing to ABBA? Wrong. Well, they do all of those things too. From the front line of the battlefield, to the mining and building of worlds, to finding out what it's like to wreak havoc as a goat. Sweden is responsible for a lot of visionary games. But I'm not gonna start bragging about stats, like telling you how many people play Candy Crush every month. 100 million. It's not like I can convince you to become a part of the Swedish games industry by showing you these numbers, telling you exactly why there's never been a better time to do so, Take it from this Swede instead.
Yeah, it's true.
See? Told ya. So, if you're interested in belonging to a community with diverse people focused on bringing the highest level of creativity to a fan base, that in turn allows this business to be one of the most profitable in the world, I'd start thinking about becoming a Swede.
So, looking at the global games business, just a few seconds, you can say 170 billion plus somewhere. Half of that is smartphone, mobile, and the other half is PC and console. If you want to simplify, you can also say that half of it is the APAC region, with China the biggest market in the world, and the rest, or the other half, is basically North America, Europe, Latin America. And I think I just continue to go back. Looking into the consoles, PlayStation is obviously in the pole position, expected to be ahead of Xbox, but both platforms are impressing, of course, and doing a lot of technology development. I just take a few seconds on the metaverse, which is starting to be a few sound bites. This is years ahead, of course, because Fortnite is not metaverse, or VR, Oculus is not this. This is something like a macro goal for media, tech, and games giant in the future, which is probably going to have no cap on the number of users or players. It's going to be a persistent and live world with, of course, some kind of economy, digital content. People are going to work there. You can be anywhere on the planet, more or less, into this metaverse, in and out, hang with your friends, and go back. And who knows? I mean, Epic is amazing with Fortnite. You have Facebook, you have Google, you have Apple, Disney, massive media house. What are they going to do with all the IPs they have? I put in Tiny Polster there, which is looking into a new technology, command streaming, because to be successful years to come will require countless new technologies, protocols, companies, innovation, and discovery to work. But if you're starting to read articles about metaverse, it's going to take time, like it did with other new invention, of course. So, recapping the game industry, the boom is here to stay, of course. And there are opportunities for big regions and cities to develop what you're going to do with a gaming cluster, how you're going to attract talent, how do the talent want to work? Are they on-site versus remote work-life balance? Because a lot of the game developments, actually most of them has been working from home and remote, which has been challenging, which you also see one of the biggest releases that had some wind in the face. Of course, a big part of that was not meeting together as a team. And one of the questions we have also in Skåne, of course, how to best attract foreign investors and studios to the region. So if we take a few seconds on the United States, you have, of course, LA and Hollywood, you have San Francisco, Silicon Valley region, you have Austin, you have New York. I didn't spend so much time on that because LA and San Francisco is no formal clusters. The challenge they have in US is, of course, especially with the previous administration, was the barrier to entry with working visas, and of course the propelling cost in Silicon Valley. It's so expensive now, so many studios are looking, should we put a satellite office in Europe? So that's basically, so US wasn't heavily on my radar. Canada was first out of the block, of course, and already 70s and the 80s, Canada was innovative with the special effects industry in Hollywood. The government in Canada approached Ubisoft, the French company, to set up a studio in Montreal with 50 people, were unique offering by paying the wages. And now Ubisoft, I think they have 3,500 something, the biggest studios in the world. So Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto, incredibly successful, inspirational clusters. And they have a strong relations with the top brand, of course. I think challenges for them, I was asking a few guys, what do you think is any challenges? And a city like Montreal, they have very big studios. They don't have the same mix like Malmö with you have Massive, you have Tarser, you have King, you have mobile, you have eSport, you have DreamHack events. So it's a nice blend in Malmö. And I think that's probably something that Canada has to keep an eye on for the next 5 years to come, of course. UK, I think it's amazing. I've been living most of my time in UK, I would say the last 15 years or so. And I mean, the collaboration in the industry is fantastic. UK, which is the trade body, I think that's the most active industry body in the world, actually. And I would also they basically coordinate with the industry, so they were giving 85,000 games to the NHS, the health and hospital workers, so doing the hard work when the game industry is propelling. I think the hospital guys are worth an applaud. So they do a lot of initiative as a trade organization. You have big hubs like Guildford, Leamington Spa, Dundee, Manchester, London, Edinburgh, Cambridge. And they also, UK is very early with machine learning, because big games like blocks, it's so important with the machine learning technology, so you get into random servers, because to avoid any bad behavior on the net, of course. Germany, incredibly big size. If you compare to the hard-working data space branch in Sweden, they have probably a team of 4, maybe 5. Not sure, I should ask Per again. Germany have close to 20 people in the trade organization. A lot of initiative, a lot of public funding. And they have, of course, Hamburg, Cologne, Berlin. I think the challenges they have, it's a bit domestic culture. Everything is dubbed, as you know. They are clearly behind to Finland, Sweden, Poland when it comes to exit system for private money. I had a discussion with Berlin yesterday, and there's going to be some event. They need to figure out how to attract more foreign investors, because today they have a lot of talent coming in from Belarus, Poland, Ukraine, etc. So they have some challenges from an international arena. Poland, surprisingly, is the market with the second highest stock companies on the stock market in the world after Japan. Obviously, Sweden and Finland is closing in quite heavily there. And I was also interesting to see 39% of the studios count for 5 or fewer staff. It's very carved out, even if you have the CD Projekt, which has been an inspirational source for everybody. But the valuation of this company is much higher than the banks, etc. So there is very productive and coordination programs between the government and the education system. Obviously, lower salary compared to Germany, Sweden, Finland, etc. Malaysia, everywhere. What? Malaysia? I also was there in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore I was before, but Malaysia is an amazing hub for animation and art. Marvel, I saw that everywhere in Kuala Lumpur. The government recognized gaming as a key important sector. They have a special government agency, MDEC, that spent time in Montreal, Cologne, in Gamescom. They are so innovative. And they also have a special team that they take care of foreigners coming in with visa. Here's a package, welcome to Kuala Lumpur, off you go. Malaysia also understand both Japanese and Western content well. So they've been successful in landing big studios in Malaysia. Kuala Lumpur is actually my new favorite city for the moment. Of course, they have a challenge to find talent with this growth that they're facing. Sweden, I don't need to say so much. Early adapters for new technology, always ahead with Skype, Minecraft, Spotify, and so on. The government has no initiatives, major initiatives for gaming, feel free to call me, but it's mostly regional projects and Jesus, I lost my English there. Initiatives, thank you, Erik, from EU grants. But also big companies from Asia have invested in Sweden, and Tencent and Nexon, for example. Stockholm has a very mature business, tons of money everywhere, but there is no formal cluster there. Challenges, I called Per Strömbeck and said, what's the biggest challenges we have in Sweden where we're printing money in Stockholm? And he said, access to talent. I mean, I talked to the Paradox guy, they hired about over 200 people last year. And now I'm going to show a video about the country which I think is best in the world when it comes to gaming clusters. And I probably need some IT help again here. I do. Olof, are you coming and help me with this? I think you're more forgiving on a digital world than on a big stage. IT guy number 2. I think it's important to show this. Now the Finland, we're going down. That's my last video about Finland and Helsinki. That's also what many VCs said. Which country are you flying most to now? And of course, that's Finland. Here we go for, can you pause 1 minute up maybe there? Perfect.
Look at the markets, look at the games you wanna create, and then can I do at least as good a job as some of the top games out there?
Finnish game industry is funny in the sense that there's a lot of sharing. So if there is some weaknesses in some companies, they can easily get the knowledge or get the right contacts or help from the others, and that actually helps, things to evolve.
Aside from the workshops, we were able to participate in different events to meet more people, to get some valuable feedback. And we also were matched with a great mentor, and we are having monthly meetings right now.
Generally, just to be open-minded and really to listen to the teams, to understand the problems they are having and to understand what they are seeking, what kind of advice they need.
At Metropolia, we started the curriculum of 3D graphics 2001, which means that we have almost 20 years of experience in teaching 3D artists. Employment rate of our students is high.
So, Finland is the one country which I think is the most innovative at the moment. Let's see what's happening. Perfect. Because they have a holistic view. They're all over the place in a positive way. They have the most venture capital per capita in Europe. And they have the slush. Google did a major investment there. And of course, they're perceived as the undisputed champions in mobile games. Because if you're looking into the mobile games business, it's really big brands that is taking the top list for the last 5-10 years. It's easy entry for foreign companies, fantastic collaboration between all the support functions in the government, in the local cities, and also with the gaming companies. And you think, what's the challenges Finland had? Well, maybe the climate, if you don't like long winters coming from Kuala Lumpur, Spain, Portugal, etc. But there are very few. I also show you this slide because I was attending a digital event from Los Angeles. There was a very active woman there, and I thought, who's she? Then I looked at the LinkedIn profile. Look at that, basically. She's US-based to keep an eye on everything with Finnish games and esport industries, based in LA. If you're a Finnish company looking to coming in to get international US company coming to Finland, please reach out to me. So they are so active on all the arenas. So coming back lastly to the clusters, which you're going to see in the report. Here I'm just going to say key findings. I basically took these cities. I didn't took Cologne. I skipped Toronto, a few other ones. Taipei, I also skipped. So what make more relevant? So it's basically Montreal, Vancouver. You see that Guildford, Helsinki, Stockholm, which is not a cluster, but still worth to have there. And Hamburg, Malaysia, and so on. Olof also asked me we want to know everything. So we did also like cost and work-life balance. So for example, every city in the report, you could see the advantages Malmö have. And it's a lot because the cost of living in Malmö is pretty low and the ease of access and everything. So quite deep analyze and study coming from Invest in Skåne, which really impressed me on the advantages to have a gaming business in this region for years to come. Key findings, of course, most of the countries have active local governments. Canada, Finland, Malaysia, Poland. The different stages in maturity, of course. You can be a newcomer. I talk to people in Romania, in Bulgaria, everywhere. And of course, they are starting. Spain and Portugal is not on the list at the moment, but they're starting to ramp up nicely. So the maturity and the resources in place is a key role, of course. Ease of access, talent, of course, but also how do you retain talent? And also when you have a cluster, be really good at something, go hard into that. And the study, Olof also said, we want to focus more on the video game and PC, even if we have great mobile companies also in the Malmö region. So last slide on the key finding. The best supporting trade organization are Finland, UK, Germany. I'm quite sure about that. Again, giving the resources. The Swedish dataspace branch is also out there on all the big events and inevitable, but it's also how much you can do as a trade body. Quite often a trade body is a developer organization, and then you have a distributor publisher organization. The distributor publishing tend to be a little bit sleepy, and it's basically the developer trade body that drives the initiatives. You need to have networking with the VC. I mean, the strong VC companies in California, Korea, etc. are flying to Helsinki all the time because there's so much opportunities in those kind of cities. You can read there on the slide. Relationship and trust with Sony, Microsoft, Unity, Tencent, Epic Game is imperative. The biggest PlayStation laboratory is in Dundee. So they have so much resources, some of the clusters from Microsoft, from Sony, and educating also top leaders to be with the student in an early phase. That's something also for Sweden to pick up in the next couple of years. So if you then try to summarize the success factor, excellent environment for smart people to live in, obviously, state-of-the-art infrastructure, internet, telecom, business premises, Malmö again, tick in the box, I'm saying Malmö region. Critical mass of talent and supporting these high-tech industries. Nearby universities, yes, and we have all the education, game assembly. Connectivity to the rest of the world. If the dance doesn't close the bridge, it's very close to Copenhagen. Being at the event, establishing sea-level contacts. When this pandemic phase out or disappear soon, we're going to have event again. That's so important. I probably spend 35% of my time networking. Collaboration, togetherness between the studios, government support, access to private money. Really important. And here we are, a little bit of homework to do in this region. And structured exit plan for investors. So, Malmö, most of the components, we have the big studios, we have game, who's going to talk about. We have a good educational platform with the universities in Lund, in Malmö, game assembly. We have an established industry conference, Nordic Game, as Erik said before me here. We have the link to Copenhagen and other nearby cities. We have initiatives with eSport. We have Malmö FF with FIFA. We have DreamHack and so on. And we have a fantastic heritage in Lund with mobile technology, what Ericsson and Sony Ericsson have done that before. What do we need to develop from my point of view, which has been living both in UK, Germany and Sweden, is international awareness and networking we can do more about. We have to be seen everywhere. Coordination of offering, information sharing, and expand the ecosystem for private investors. Because what you can also hear, look at the stock market for the game industry is unbelievable. And relation to platform holders, Sony, Microsoft, Unity, Epic Game. So I think that's where we can do more as a region, but we have all the components and we're already doing a fantastic job. Of course, people know Massive landed the Lucasfilm Games Star Wars game, for example. So of course the game industry know about Malmö, but we need to go beyond that because that's also to raise the money and so on. Recommendation from the report, basically make sure you're connected with all the key organization. I think Sweden in general is quite fragmented. I think the Skåne region is quite fragmented. But try to have meetings informal and structure. Appoint a good advisor, blink, blink, to promote the region. And make sure the local politician understand some of this industry, which they should do by now because we've been around for a long time. And develop a good structure. Have meetings with investors and bank. Let Nasdaq in Stockholm has been incredibly, and Finland has been very, very active international because foreign companies are coming to Nasdaq, for example. So we have to promote the financial system even harder. Set the goals, have a combined vision. I think that's it from me, and I think we're going to have a Q&A later on as well. Let's see what happened when I push this slide. Yep, that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Stefan. I've been informed that we are going to take a small break, so we'll give you 3 minutes to stretch your legs, use the facilities, and maybe refill that cup of coffee, and then we'll be back with Peter Lübeck, the CEO of Game Habitat. See you in a bit. And we're back. And now it's a great honor and a great pleasure for me to introduce Peter Lübeck, the CEO of Game Habitat. He's joining us with a link, and I hope it will be online now. Thank you.
Okay. Is everything working? Okay. Good to not see anyone because I'm not seeing anything apart from my presentation, but it's good to be part of this program. And now I guess I have to eat up the fact that I proposed to have it late in a Friday afternoon. Of course, that's not the best time slot for a long presentation. And I'm definitely going to beat Erik Robertson's 20 slides. I think I have twice that amount. So let's get going. My name is Peter Lübeck. I'm the CEO of Game Habitat. And I have a background in game design and production. I've been working at Tarsha Studios as a producer for the Little Big Planet franchise. And for the past few years, I've been developing Game Habitat, which we're going to talk more about. So I'm going to be diving into the past, present, and future of the games industry in southern Sweden to give you some context of where we're coming from, where we are right now, and some ideas about what we think that we're going to be doing for the future. So let's dive into the past. We have been talking a bit about sort of the background of the industry, and we've been talking about some of the key players for the past 20 years. And there is actually something I want to mention that has been an important part. It's that more than 20 years ago, 25 years ago, there was an initiative called the Malmö Hacker Academy that took place in Malmö. And if you trace a lot of the things that's been happening in our region for the past 20 years, a lot of it started there. It was a pioneering education looking into the future of digital entertainment. And it led to, among other things, that there was a school started called the School of Future Entertainment. That was also one of the pioneers in 3D graphics and programming. And a lot of the people who attended that education, which is in Karlshamn, a couple of hours north of Malmö, they were part of founding a lot of the companies that we then seen grow into bigger companies. And around this time, Massive Entertainment was also started in Ronneby. And so that was where I think most of the seeds were planted that has led towards where we are today. So what you can see on this slide is leading up from there up until when Game Habitat was founded in 2013. At that time, we were about 20 companies that sort of came together about wanting to develop this region further. So what is Game Habitat? Well, in short, we are a community-focused nonprofit organization that is working to create the best possible environment for game development. We're based in Malmö, and we're working mainly with the region of southern Sweden. And to give you some context of where sort of Game Habitat began and what we've been doing for the past 7 years leading up to today, I'm going to take you through a rapid 7-year journey. So we founded the organization in 2013, and we had our founding meeting in the fall of 2013, and we gathered 20 stakeholders from the region to sort of set this up, the nonprofit. And then in 2014, we started working on our idea for the future, so our vision for 2020, which at the time felt quite far away. We also did our first collaboration with Invest in Skåne, where we surveyed the industry in the region to figure out sort of what are the key players, you know, the numbers, the growth, and all those things. And we've been trying to keep that updated ever since. And then in 2015, things started falling into place. We were pitching this idea to the City of Malmö and the region of Skåne, and then decided to get on board, which allowed us to get our first employee, which was me. And then we started doing our first event, started doing something called Seriously Indie, which was about sort of planting the seeds to get more people to think about starting their own studios. We started doing our game developer meetups, which is basically getting people to hang out after work. And in the beginning, there were perhaps 50 people who attended them, and it's been growing ever since. And then we started doing dev sessions, which were where we got specialists from the different fields in the industry to meet and talk over sort of the borders of the companies to learn from each other and share common challenges. In 2016, we got some increased support or continued support from the public, and we started diving into sort of taking the next step to start more companies, and we did something called Game Startup Academy together with the MINC, the local incubator. We also started doing more high-profile sort of events, keynotes with speakers like Anita Sarkeesian. We also started working together with the Nordic Game Conference to, show people around the city. We did a studio bus tour where we shipped some people around to the different studios in the city to really start promoting the diversity of the things that we have here in Malmö. And then in 2017, we started to get some more increased funding, and we started a game incubator together with Mink. And we also did a collaboration with the film industry, looking into how to develop sort of IP rights for film and games. It's called Crafting Worlds. And in 2018, thanks to this increased funding, we started to actually scale up the team to 4 people. Malmö Stad also went in and supported our initiative to create a physical meeting place for the games industry, which was launched at the end of the year in 2018. And at the time, when we opened sort of the sneak preview of DevHub, which I'm also going to be mentioning more later on, we were maybe 5 game studios and 20 people who moved into a big empty building in central Malmö. And then in 2019, we gone from, having these small meetups, 5 years earlier where we had maybe 50 people come, and now we were at 400 people. So we had 400 game developers come to a single game developer meetup, really showing sort of the growth and the interest that we've been garnering in this community. We started doing some more dev talk series at DevHub. We got a funding to start working more with kids and youth, which is continuing today. And then in 2020, there were a lot of new initiatives forming sort of as a consequence of all the work that's been put into developing this cluster. We started a project with a local organization called Equal Gaming, meant to support the work with inclusiveness, like inclusion and diversity in the games industry. We are also starting a big EU project called Game Accelerate Southern Sweden, which I'm going to mention more about later. And within just 2 years, this house, DevHub, reached its full capacity. And I'm going to show you more about that. So this is sort of what's happened in the past 7 years. I know there's a lot of information to take in this late in the week, but I think it's instead of talking about sort of what is Game Habitat, what do we do, this is actually what, concrete examples of what we've been doing for the past 7 years. And also some key things that have been happening in the past 4 years is that we have received at least one major studio that's either started or opened up an office in Malmö. So Shark Mob started in 2017, Avalanche joined in 2018, set up their Malmö studio, IO set up a Malmö studio in 2019, and in 2020, the Thunderful Group opened up a studio as well. So that is also sort of a testament to what we've been able to build as a region in the past 7 years. And if you look at our original prognosis, so when we started this organization and we started talking to the public officials about what we thought that we were gonna be able to achieve if we started working then in 2013. By then we already had about 400 to 500 people working in the games industry. And we said that if we invest now and we commit now, we're gonna be 1,200 people by 2020. And that's actually, we've been able to stick to that curve. We actually exceeded it a bit. So it's been a steady growth of about 15% per year, which is really good. And coming back to that sort of original vision that we started working at in 2014, we had 4 major sort of strategic goals that we were working towards. And the first one was that by 2020, we wanted to have established ourselves as a world-class game development cluster. We wanted to have at least a starting point of creating the best ecosystem for game startups in Europe. We wanted to have achieved global recognition as a leading game region, and we wanted to have built or created this one-of-a-kind game development hub or house. So this is sort of the starting point for Game Habitat back then. And of course, this has been picked up. Most of this press is in Swedish, but I'll briefly translate. In the past couple of years, there's been a lot of attention focused at Malmö and the booming games industry sector. And these headlines basically say that now Malmö is going to become the capital of gaming in Europe. And this is, of course, a great brand identity for the city. It's a growing creative industry. It's a lot of positive media around it. And we're very thankful that we've been able to sort of spread this message, at least within Sweden and maybe the Nordics, but we still need to make some more noise when it comes to spreading it in Europe. So that was it for the past, very brief, a lot of information, I know. So let's talk about where we are today. So this is the region that we are working with, Skåne and Blekinge, the southernmost provinces of Sweden. And of course, we're very close to Copenhagen, for those of you who are not familiar with Malmö's location. We estimate that we have around 70 game companies. We have at least 10 different game school or game education programs, over 1,200 game developers, and over 900 game students. So that is sort of the scope of our game cluster. And to put that in perspective, there are now more game developers in Malmö than there are in all of Denmark, according to the latest data I have available. So that's quite an achievement. But of course, the numbers aren't that interesting. What's more interesting is the fact that we're making games for all platforms, reaching hundreds of millions of players worldwide. So the impact that these games have in the world is difficult to grasp. Some of them alone have hundreds of millions of users, but combined together, it's really a force to be reckoned with. And the previous speakers have already mentioned some of the key players or success stories that we have in the region. I usually mention these three as sort of the main drivers of growth. So Massive has been around for over 20 years, gradually growing into this behemoth of 650 employees and working on really high profile projects like The Division and Avatar. The Nordic Game Conference has, of course, also almost been around for 20 years, really important factor in attracting new business to the region. And then the Game Assembly, which has consistently been ranked as one of the top game schools in the world. And of course, you can't really ignore the fact that Massive is now going to be working on Star Wars. So not only are they working on Avatar, now they're working on another of the biggest film franchises of all time. And it's all happening in Malmö, which is amazing. But there is not only the big companies that are the success stories. Here are three examples of small companies, 1 to 3 people that have made a huge impact. So Mediocre, which is no longer active, but their games have reached over 300 million people worldwide. Simogo was recently, they received the best Apple arcade game of 2019. They received multiple Apple Design Awards. And then we have Dead Toast, who made My Friend Pedro, which sold 250,000 units in 1 week. It's developed by one person, which is amazing success as well. And this has not gone unnoticed by people in Hollywood. So My Friend Pedro is turning into a television series by the writer of John Wick. And the Russo brothers, who are famous for working on the Marvel franchise, are developing Little Nightmares into a TV series. So it's not only the games themselves, but it's getting a lot of attention or traction elsewhere as well. So back to Game Habitat and what we're doing. So our vision is for southern Sweden to become the best environment for anything and everyone that has to do with game development. And the way we're doing that is that we're working very actively to sort of create and nurture this ecosystem, thriving, supportive, and inclusive ecosystem. So we're focusing a lot on the community aspects of this game development cluster. We want people to meet and have a good time and be able to explore and develop sort of their creative work and interests. And we have a strong backing from the industry. So this is our lineup of members for this year. We have our 5 Guardian members, Shark Mob, Massive, King, Coffee Stain, and Tarsher, who are sort of our main supporters. And then we have a bunch of other studios ranging from small indie studios to the game education and the conference and similar, who are all supporting this initiative, both with their membership fees, but also with time and effort. So this is how it all comes together. The members elect our board, which consists of people from the industry, but also public officials from the city and the region and the universities. And we also then get public funding from the City of Malmö and the region of Skåne in order to sort of do the activities, coordinate the projects and the different events that we do. And we also then have a subsidiary, which is our dev hub, our game development hub. And this is the team as it looks today. We have reached an important milestone, I would say, this year, being 5 people working with Game Habitat. It's been quite a long journey to come to this point, but now I think we're reaching critical mass and are able to sort of achieve more than we've ever done before. And this is where we see ourselves. So we are the glue or the hub or the heart of this ecosystem. And we really want to be the bridge between the talent and the universities and the industry and the public sector, and also coordinate with other industries that have interest in our sector. And this is our house, our home. This has been on the radar for a long time. This is one of the reasons that we started this organization in the first place, was so that we could gather our community under one roof. And it's now almost 3 years ago that this started to fall into place. And in 2018, we were 20 people from 5 companies who moved into this big empty house in the heart of Malmö. And now we are over 30 companies spanning 5 floors and 2,500 square meters, from indie developers to AAA to publishers and investors and ecosystem actors. And this has been a really long journey, and I think this has sort of become a symbol for everything that we have in the region and in the city, and it becomes an embassy of sorts where we can showcase the diversity of our community. And these are our current tenants that are housed with us in this building. And this is how it looks. For those of you who can't be attending this event on site, it's a very nice, spacious building in the center of Malmö, and we're very happy to have it as our home. And if you want any more information about DevHub, you can visit gamehabitat.se/devhub. So moving into the future, which I guess is why we are here. So I briefly mentioned our old vision or our previous idea of what we were developing towards, and some of it we've already achieved, but some of it we're still working towards. So I'm going to mention sort of 3 main areas where I think we are going to be putting most of our attention going forward, and also tying back to Stefan's report about the things that we need to do as a region to sort of ensure continued growth in the future. So the first thing, which I think we have a good chance of doing, I know Erik showed some numbers about the concentration per capita. I know that he has different numbers from me, because I get it when I look at the per capita concentration in Malmö compared to Stockholm. We're actually on equal footing. So maybe we have to figure that out afterwards. But anyway, I think this is an interesting goal to strive for, because we have a good chance of claiming this position. Number 2 is that we are still working to create Europe's best ecosystem for creating and supporting early stage game studios. And the third, which is I think one of Game Habitat's key values, is that we want to create the world's most open, inclusive, diverse, and supportive game dev community. So moving into number 1, the highest concentration of game developers per capita in Europe. So if we zoom back to this, our original sort of vision for how much this industry would grow in 5 to 6 years when we started Game Habitat. We thought that we would achieve 1,200 people by 2020, which would have been an average growth of about 15%. So if we zoom out, these numbers here are actually the actual numbers. So they're very close to our original estimate, slightly higher. So 15% growth per year. If we just play with the idea that we continue on the same path, no acceleration, that would actually mean that in 2025, we would have doubled to almost 2,500 people working with the games industry in southern Sweden. And fast forward another 5 years, that would mean almost 5,000 people by 2030. And I think this is within sort of within the grasp of the games industry's growth. And of course, there are challenges to achieve this goal, but we've already proven that we can grow at this pace. And the bigger the industry gets in the region, the more traction it's going to get worldwide as well. But there are a few things that we are planning to do to make this easier, or rather possible to achieve this goal, which brings me to number 2, creating Europe's best ecosystem for early stage game studios. So we are working with an idea, call it the game studio creation process, which is divided into these different steps, creating sort of a funnel that gets smaller over time. And it starts with creating awareness. So here we are working with kids and youth. I mentioned that project before, but it's basically of making sure that as many people as possible are aware of the opportunities that lie ahead in game development. So inspiring the next generation of game developers through different events and activities. And speaking of inspire, once we have people who sort of maybe start taking the first step into the industry, we want to get them thinking about maybe they should start their own game company. And we do that by having different talks, workshops, meetups, and community building. The next step is to enable them to start their own company. And here we are going to be working more with matchmaking, making sure that the right people meet each other so they can form teams that can then grow into new companies, and combined with coaching and seed funding and things like that. The fourth step is support. And here we collaborate with the incubators in the region to make sure that they all have what they need in order to support game companies within their existing structures. And then accelerate, which is more about sort of companies that are more mature and are ready to take a big leap forward with the right input. And then the final stage, which is a bit tuned down, because this is where many of our current companies and members are at today. They are stable, they are established, they've released multiple successful games, and they're still growing. And then the focus becomes more on talent attraction and retention. So we are already mapping out the concrete activities that are going to happen within all of these steps. So if you look at awareness, last year we had our first sort of game awareness day, where we are talking about game development and game culture, focusing on people who are working with this in their daily lives, daily work day. The next thing we are launching now is Game Startup Academy, which is a follow-up to the thing I mentioned before, where we do workshops for individuals who are looking to start or dreaming about starting their own company someday. This is going to be followed with something called the Game Startup Boost Camp, which is launching in Q2 this year. And hopefully within in the near future, there's going to be a game incubation handbook for all the game incubators in the region and possibly elsewhere as well. That is really making, creating the best practices for how to work with early stage game companies. And then the last step, and this may be one of the most important things that we're going to be doing in the next few years, is that we're working to create a world-class acceleration program that is going to be on site in Malmö at DevHub with an international sort of intake. So we are looking to set this up now. We are working this year to get the right partners on board and figuring out the funding structure and all of that. And hopefully, in not too far away, we are going to be able to launch this program on site at DevHub. So this is to give you a general idea of how do we become that ecosystem. We need to work across all of these different steps to create this funnel that will lead to an increase in both new companies starting in the region, but also more companies actually wanting to come and set up here. And a lot of this is possible thanks to this project I mentioned briefly in the beginning, called Game Accelerate South Sweden. And it's funded through EU grants, and it's a collaboration between the incubators and one of the universities in southern Sweden. So we have Blekinge Business Incubator, we have the Malmö Incubator, MINC, Ideon Innovation, and then the Blekinge Institute of Technology, all working together over a period of 3 years to build this joint sort of process and designing an ecosystem that can solve all of these things. So if you're interested in knowing more about this, just feel free to reach out to us and we'll tell you all about it. Number 3, the world's most open, inclusive, diverse, and supportive game dev community. So there's a reason we say these words, and it's because we, in some aspects, we're already perceived like this by some of the people who have been moving here in recent years. And we know from a fact that a lot of people come here and they feel like they've come home. And that's something we really want to cultivate. And we think that's one of the, maybe, you know, if you disregard all the numbers and the growth and all the cool companies and all the cool games, if it comes down to it, if people don't feel at home and don't feel safe, then we might be able to attract them here, but maybe they won't stay. So building this place where people can be safe and have a great quality of life while working on some of the best games in the world, I think that's where we will be able to unlock the possibility of this type of growth that we are aiming for. And there are a lot of things that we can and are doing to facilitate this. And this is not something you solve by just doing a single activity. It's something you work with across all of your activities and all of your projects. So we are doing now, for example, a Swedish for game developers program, not focusing only on the language, but also on the cultural aspects of being a game developer that has moved to Sweden. We're looking to develop a spouse and partner program to make sure that even the people who come here together with game developers get a good chance of integrating, learning the language and the culture and building their own networks, because we know that it's a super important part of making it work in the long term. We're already doing a lot of community building activities and meetups in a regular year, and we hope to be able to resume it soon because we know it's a very important part of what we do. We have also been talking with a few officials about the idea of creating some sort of relocation support program. So I don't know, some sort of guide that can help you with your transition from wherever you're moving from to Malmö. And I just saw recently that the Finns are beating us again in this. They are offering a 90-day come and live in Helsinki. We pick you up at the airport. We get you a place to stay and an office to work from, and you can just try out life in Finland. And we are doing part of this together with Invest in Skåne, having an office at DevHub, as Olof mentioned before. But we can do a lot more, and I think that's something we really should be working towards for the next few years. Also developing the leadership, creating a studio culture where the leaders in the different game companies are aware of challenges that may prohibit creating this type of environment. Ideally, we would work under a common value sort of foundation as a community. And in order to help that out, we have, as part of this Equal Gaming project, now a handbook for inclusion and equality. This is just examples. I mean, we need to do a lot more, than this, but these are some of the things that we think are going to be helpful in building this type of environment. And this is a bit early still, but we are launching a new initiative called GEM, which is going to combine a lot of these things into a concrete project that is now being run by Game Habitat with support from a lot of the major studios in the region. And this is about creating empowerment and inclusion for people who may not be feel like they have the best support or be most included in how things are run at this point in time. So stay tuned for more information about GEM this year, and we hope that this is going to be an important part of creating this environment. So moving on, so just to wrap up, because I think a big part of why we're doing this event, this Game Summit, is that we want to get the conversation started together with other stakeholders in the region. And of course, we've been doing some of this for some time, but we really need to step up our game in order to maintain and develop this position as a leading game region. There are 4 things that I think we need to do going forward. We really need to work together more as a community, and that means not only all the game companies and Game Habitat, but also the public sector, the universities, other stakeholders. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for all of us to get involved and work together. We need to sort of unite under a shared vision and strategy. And we've been doing work in this area for a long time, but I think we can involve more people and organizations to work towards this goal. And something that Stefan also mentioned, that we need to start telling our story. Sure, we made headlines in Sweden, but we need to make headlines on a global scale, because we want that every game developer in the world should consider southern Sweden and Malmö as the next place for them, regardless of if it's getting an education or taking the next step in your career or starting your own studio or whatever it might be. But we need them to know of that here you can find all of that and have a really good quality of life at a lower cost, as someone mentioned before as well. So we need to start telling our story, and we as an organization don't have the muscle to get that message out. So we need to help each other to do that. And then number 4, that we need to stay ahead of the competition. Stefan mentioned about Finland, for example, and there are a lot of good initiatives happening, and we still have quite a good, I would say, momentum as a city and a region, but we can't get lazy. We really need to keep investing, keep pushing, and keep developing towards this vision in order to make sure that we can, be considered still the leading game region. And with that, I'm gonna sort of wrap up. I hope that this event is gonna lead to follow-ups in the near future where we can actively sit down and discuss these things in more detail. This has been more of a one-way information kind of show, but I think the idea is that we can continue this in more of a conversation format, hopefully quite soon. So if you have any questions for me, you can reach me at peter@gamehabitat.se. And if you're one of the people who like to use QR codes, there's one, oh no, maybe it's blocked actually. It might be blocked, but regardless, you can find our Discord on our Facebook page or on our website if you want to join in the conversation. So that was all for me. Thank you very much for listening and watching my 40 slides, and I hope to talk to you all soon.
Thank you so much, Peter. We have some questions from the audience, and I hope that Peter is still able to hear me. So I will read the questions, and I hope that Peter can answer them. Both questions are regarding games, game development and education. So the first question I have is from Ola Jakobsson. He asks, are there connections between the games industry in Skåne and the educational system? I am thinking also arts education on different levels. Could you please answer that, Peter, for us? Appears that Peter doesn't hear us, so okay.
Okay, sorry, I had a hard time hearing the question. And so is there any connection between the education system in the region and arts and crafts? Sorry, I didn't hear the complete question. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to education and the game industry, it's mainly the connection is mainly happening in the advanced vocational education, like the game assembly. And the reason for that is that that education is rigged to basically provide the industry with talent. So once you've done that, the program, you are ready to start working at a game studio. But the industry is not actively, I think, working with sort of low. Oh, sorry, I have a hard time hearing. There's some disturbance. I think we. Yes. Okay, so the question is, are there any ways to get engaged in game development at sort of an early level in school? I take it. And I think something that we are working on right now, it's this kids and youth project. And that's basically, the whole purpose of it is to make sure that the kids and youth in our region are, get the opportunity to learn game development at an early stage. And there are already workshops and things done at schools to support this. So throughout this year, we will be coming out with more news and more activities related to this project, and hopefully it's going to become a permanent part of what we do. But more detail than that, I don't think I can provide an answer for right now.
Thank you so much, Peter, for answering those questions for us. We have received another question from Ask Me, is the username in the chat. High tax in Sweden is the main reason for investors staying away from Sweden. What are you doing in this regard? And I'm going to pass this over to Stefan Lampinen, and he will give his answer.
I mean, I think taxes is always a bit of your own perception, because the corporate tax in Sweden is not high compared to many other countries in Europe, for example, UK. So you can also be either your own company and have lower corporate tax, of course. But was the question around investors staying away from Sweden? Well, I would challenge that comment because the Nasdaq and the investors, if you look into Avanza and all the investors going into Swedish games companies, I think it's quite good. I hear the comment when you look into Poland and US and Nasdaq and so on, but it's hard because tax is always a political question, and you obviously get a lot for the taxes in Sweden. So, but I would say if you're your own person and want to come into the industry, taxes, I wouldn't say, is a major challenge. I know there's a lot of video game tax reliefs program going around in Europe, but I don't see that as a main barrier at the moment. However, I understand the question.
Thank you so much, Stefan. And from my perspective, or the organization of Invest in Skåne, I would also like to underline that there are rumors, or rather that the Swedish tax is very high. That's not necessarily the case. There are other different ways, and also, as Stefan mentioned, you get a lot for the taxes in Sweden. And we can compete in other areas, such as quality of life and work-life balance and so forth. So that is what I would like to add to that question. And if there is no other questions in the chat, I can't see any, and my colleagues can't see any either. Then the only thing remaining to me as the host for today is thank you so much for participating. Thank you so much for watching. And hopefully you have found it interesting and amusing in more ways than just the information given to you today. And if you have any questions in either to the presenters or any of questions regarding the presentations, or want to ask the presenters anything else at any other point, we will make the presentations available online, and the presentation will also be available on YouTube. And if you have any other questions, we will also provide the contact information for all the presenters afterwards to all those who have registered. So with that, thank you so much for listening, and thank you, and have a nice weekend. Bye.